Welcome to another episode of Out from the Horrorbox. I'm your cowardly host, Dom, and in this episode we take a look at the animated comedy horror TV series about a dog who lives with an elderly couple in a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. The trio is thrown into bizarre, frequently disturbing, and often paranormal or supernatural adventures. Created by John R. Dilworth for Cartoon Network and produced by Dilworth's animation studio, Stretch Films, this is Courage, the Cowardly Dog.
We interrupt this program to bring you Courage, the Cowardly Dog Show, starring Courage, the Cowardly Dog. Abandoned as a pup, he was found by Muriel, who lives in the middle of nowhere with her husband, Eustace Bay. But creepy stuff happens in nowhere. It's up to Courage to save his new home.
Stupid dog! You made me look bad!
Created by John R. Dilworth as a 7-minute animated short, The Chicken from Outer Space, with Hanna-Barbera and sponsored by Cartoon Network and introduced Courage. Dilworth graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the School of Visual Arts in New York in 1985. He then became an art director and founded his own animation studio, Stretch Films, in 1991 and became incorporated in 1994. The animated short, The Chicken from Outer Space, was shown as one of the episodes of Cartoon Network's What a Cartoon in 1996. This was a Hanna-Barbera innovation by then President Fred Siebert. What a Cartoon, which later was known as What a Cartoon Show and The Cartoon Show, was an animated anthology series created by Siebert for Cartoon Network, where the shorts were produced by Hanna-Barbera Productions, and by the end of the run, a Cartoon Network Studios production tag was added to some of the shorts to signal that they were original to the network. The project consisted of 48 cartoons and were intended to return creative power to animators and artists by recreating the atmospheres that spawned the iconic cartoon characters of the mid-20th century. So essentially they were trying to get some newer ideas, fresher ideas from the animators, the people who come up with the story, the artists themselves, and not just coming from like the big studios. They wanted more people to like start engaging, especially, at this time they kind of had stagnated a little bit where, Nick was premiering their like Nicktoons, and they had some new stuff going there. Disney was working on whatever Disney was working on in the early 90s. They had the Renaissance going on then. So Cartoon Network was like looking for something to kind of revitalize things. So they were allowing for more innovation, and they would put 3 of these cartoons together into a half-hour episode. What a Cartoon served as a launching point for several Cartoon Network series that would go on to become iconic in their own. So Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken, and the Powerpuff Girls all came from this, and they had their premieres on there. And once they had several original shorts, those became the first cartoons. Following Siebert's departure in 1997, Sam Register took over and controlled the show in 1998. And by 2000, he had rebranded it to the Cartoon Show, with more Cartoon Network originals being spawned from that showcase, including Sheep in the Big City, Grim and Evil, which was consisting of Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy and Evil Con Carne, Whatever Happened to Robot Jones, Codename Kid Next Door, and Megas XLR. They all came from this rebranded What a Cartoon Show to Cartoon Show. And it's crazy because I remember, watching these on there, especially like Johnny Bravo. I remember watching on there. I remember watching this episode, The Chicken from Outer Space, on there. I remember watching like Cow and Chicken, Powerpuff Girls, that original pilot that they did for the hat. It's crazy. I mean, even like Whatever Happened to Robot Jones, Sheep in the Big City, Grim and Evil, Codename Kid Next Door, all those. I remember all of them from all that on there. It's just kind of crazy when like I look back and it's like, man, I remember all of this stuff, and it just they just spawned right after that. The short, The Chicken from Outer Space, served as the de facto pilot for the future series that is Courage the Cowardly Dog, and had no dialogue except for one line spoken by Courage, who had a more authoritative voice akin to Jackie Mason than in the series. He's spoken by voice actor Howard Hoffman, who also provided all the other vocal sounds and effects for the short. An alien chicken was the villain in the short, who later reappears in the series to seek revenge. His sons also attempt to seek revenge in an even later episode. This short was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film in the 68th Academy Awards, but lost to the Wallace and Gromit short film A Close Shave, which, I mean, that's very impressive unto itself that it was nominated, the Chicken from Outer Space, and then went on to spawn its own TV show. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Like how many other of these would go on to be nominated for Best Animated Short, right? At the Academy Awards. They had to show something about this that was unlike everything else. So the premise of the show for Courage the Cowardly Dog follows Courage. He's a kind yet easily frightened dog, and he was abandoned when he was a little puppy after his parents were sent into outer space by a crazed veterinarian, but you don't find out about that until the very last episode. Soon after, he was found in an alleyway by Muriel Bagg. She's a caring older woman who decided to take Courage in as her own. The nature of this first meeting inspired her to give him his name, Courage. In the present, Courage lives in an isolated farmhouse with Muriel and her husband, Eustace Bagg. He's a cranky and greedy man who's jealous of Courage and always refers to him as stupid dog, and periodically uses an Ooga Booga mask, which is this big green mask with mismatched eyes and big nose that frightens Courage, and he uses it often to frighten him. The nearest town to the farmhouse is called the town called Nowhere. So they live in the middle of nowhere. Courage and his owners frequently encounter monsters, aliens, zombies, and other paranormal or supernatural creatures that are attracted to Nowhere. The plots generally use conventions common to horror films, although most of the creatures the three face are hostile. Others suffer from distress, anger, or depression, and are sometimes actually friendly creatures, and they actually don't mean to hurt them. The task of protecting Muriel and Eustace from such dangers falls on Courage, who endeavors to thwart or reconcile with the monsters of the week, and remedy or repair any damages done. Although Courage is occasionally aided with the task, the full extent of his efforts are usually performed unbeknownst to Muriel or Eustace. Usually they're kind of oblivious to everything that's going on. Usually Muriel's kind of oh, don't be silly. Courage, that's not a monster. And Eustace just is oh, what kind of money can we make out of it? Ironically, given his name Courage, may be considered a genuine hero who often goes to great lengths to protect his owners, and a genuine coward who still expresses much of his distress with over-the-top, piercing shrieks, which he does constantly. And I rewatched a couple episodes to just refresh my memory on some of them. There's one that I completely forgot he did this, where he's yelling and all of his teeth go everywhere, and he's like, oh, it actually hurt him. It was pretty funny. Although episodic in nature, there are a handful of recurring characters in the show's cast, including Courage's sarcastic, sentient computer, who I watched an episode with the computer, and it's that thing's a dick. The family physician, Dr. Vindaloo, a fortune-telling chihuahua named Shirley, the medium, Eustace's mother, Ma, and then a couple villains like Cats and Lickwack. Alright, so now let's kind of get into the main characters. There's 3 of them. So let's just start straight with our main character, Courage. He's played by Marty Grabstein and is the titular character and protagonist of the series. He's kind, yet easily frightened dog who was abandoned as a puppy after, like I said, his parents were sent into outer space. But he was adopted by Muriel. Her husband, Eustace, regularly mistreats him. Ironically, given his name, Courage is a coward, a genuine coward, and often expresses his distress with, like I said, over-the-top shrieks and, just, trying to not be in the situation at all, hiding and, trying to get out of the situation as much as he can. Regardless, he still goes great lengths to protect his owners, especially Muriel. To the end, he often gets injured, sometimes quite brutally, and only surviving through his detriment and or pure luck. Despite his cowardice, Courage is very clever and resourceful when the situation demands it, outsmarting the villains most of the time. He often displays superhuman strength, carrying Muriel and Eustace with relative ease. Aiding him at saving the day is a self-aware, sarcastic, and seemingly omniscient computer that he keeps in the attic. He got his name when Muriel found him as a puppy alone in an alley and remarked that he must be quite brave to be there by himself. Next up is Muriel Begg herself, played by Thea White. She is Courage's owner and Eustace's wife. She's a plump, kind, hardworking Scottish woman who took in Courage when he was abandoned as a puppy. Muriel often carries a rolling pin that she hits Eustace with whenever he harasses Courage. She also likes tea and usually tends to her garden, as well as being an accomplished sitar player, which is okay. Muriel also has a great fondness for, she loves cooking. However, her recipes tend to include an excessive amount of vinegar, much to the distaste of both Courage and Eustace. Most of all, she loves sitting in her rocking chair with Courage on her lap and watching TV. Due to her kindness and sweet nature, Muriel is an easy and often attractive target for villains. The crossover movie Straight Outta Nowhere, Scooby-Doo meets Courage the Cowardly Dog, was White's final role before she died of liver cancer in 2021. Now moving on to Eustace Begg, who is Muriel's husband. He's an elderly, skinny, greedy, cynical, and sarcastic American man who is obsessed with his vintage truck. Eustace wears glasses identical in appearance to Muriel's. His brown hat shields his glistening bald head. Eustace is the current owner of the farmhouse, which was previously owned by his now-deceased brother, Horst. Eustace regularly yells at Courage and calls him a stupid dog. He regularly dismisses Muriel as well, but he still does love his wife, as evident in his concern for her well-being in a few episodes like The Demon in the Mattress. Lionel Wilson originally voiced the character, but left midway through the 3rd season due to illness, and eventually died 5 months later after the show ended. He was replaced by Arthur Anderson. However, many vocals and sounds of grunts, laughs, screams, and catchphrases from Wilson have been used while Anderson was recording. In 2014, the short titled The Fog of Courage, Wallace Shawn replaced Anderson as the voice of Eustace in the crossover episode or special with Scooby-Doo, Straight Outta Nowhere. Veteran voice actor Jeff Bergman plays Eustace. So his voice has been kind of all over the place with who's played him. I think for the most part, then Lionel Wilson would be considered the main actor, voice actor. And I didn't know Walshawn actually played Eustace in an episode for the short, The Fog of Courage. It's kind of crazy. Alright, so now let's get into some of the recurring characters. First up, Courage's computer, who's played by Simon Preble. He speaks with an English accent and gives him advice on how to deal with the crazy situations. Located in the farmhouse attic, he's a very cynical and sarcastic type of AI, I guess, or computer programming towards Courage, and has a habit of regularly cracking jokes in any situation. The computer also appears to often provide Courage with sarcastic and unhelpful advice, and I remember like it just watching the episodes that I watched, and like he goes to him and it's just like come on, like just give him the answer he needs. It's so funny. Then there's Dr. Vindaloo, played by Paul Schofler. He's an Indian doctor with a thick accent whom Eustace and Meryl see when something is wrong. He's one of the few characters in the series who can perfectly understand what Courage is trying to say, and he diagnoses his patients as not having serious problems or that there's nothing that he can do, but has on occasion been a great help. He often quotes, "There's nothing to worry about, nothing at all," when questioned about certain health conditions or situations. And I like it's like bringing all these up, like it's bringing back all the memories, and like I just remember he like Dr. Vindaloo. And then there's Ma Beg, who's played by Billy Lou Watt. She's the mother of Eustace and Horst, and Muriel's mother-in-law, who shares a love-hate relationship with the former, usually calling him stupid boy. She lives in a trailer and is the widow of Icket Bag, Eustace's father. Like Eustace, she's actually bald, but wears a wig and looks almost identical to her son, but much shorter, along with being insecure due to being bald. But she does have her teeth. It is learned that Ma and Horst's ill treatment was part of Eustace's negative personality. She tends to treat Courage kindly whenever Eustace is around, possibly because she knows it annoys him, though she also has a love-hate relationship with him, and calls him stupid dog, just like Eustace does. She's also the owner of Growth Industries, a company that provides wigs and experiments on certain people with a rare blood type, one that Muriel has. And honestly, I couldn't remember what she looked like, and I couldn't remember what episode. And then while I was going through this, I was like, oh yeah, because she actually, like, I'm kind of like, the description of her is that she looks identical. She does. She looks identical. Like if you took Eustace and shrunk him down, but like she has teeth. Like that's literally what she looks like. It's so funny that it wasn't until like reading the description I was like, oh yeah, oh my god, I completely forgot what she looked like. Next we have Shirley the Medium, played by Mary Testa. She's a small green chihuahua, garbed in stereotypical gypsy, quote unquote, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, fortune teller who resides in a dilapidated caravan. She's a strong dislike of Eustace, whom she always refers to as the stupid one, because of his greed and selfishness. Due to this, she often places Eustace under curses to get him to be a better person. Shirley is one of Courage's 3 confidants, the other being the computer and Dr. Vindaloo, of course, and helps him occasionally by casting and reciting spells and playing the saxophone in between verses. Then we get into a couple of the recurring villains. There's Katz, who's also played by Paul Schofler, and so is the next one. They're both played by Paul Schofler as well. Katz is a red, lanky, anthropomorphic cat with a posh English accent. He is Courage's nemesis and the show's most reoccurring antagonist, though Muriel and Eustace consistently fail to recognize him. He specializes in scam businesses and is extremely sadistic. Many of his businesses involve torturing or outright killing his customers. For example, in Night at the Cat's Motel, he fed his motel residents to flesh-eating spiders, and in Club Cats, he transformed the vacationers into anthropomorphic machines to fight for him in gladiator-style arena. All of his businesses enforce a strict "no dogs allowed" policy, forcing Courage to sneak in. He often challenges Courage to ironically banal games such as wall ball and staring contests, which Courage invariably loses. Nevertheless, he is always defeated in the end. Unlike the rest of the series' villains, he is frequently accompanied by his own theme, which consists of sinister hip-hop beat. Next up, we got Liquac, and as I said, also played by Paul Schoeffler, is a French conduct who first appears early in the show's first season, in which he has a fake amnesia specialist license. He comes to the Bag's house when Muriel suffers from amnesia. Since then, he frequently returns and manages to dupe Courage's owners into helping him commit crime sprees. Liquac is also shown to be capable of escaping custody, such as when he is first arrested and secondly cause a fire at prison. While getting all this together, I was trying to remember, some of the most notable episodes for me. And then I just started going through and looking at because it's all of it's available, the whole series on Max, at least for right now. So if you want to go watch Courage, he's all on there. I think he might also be all on Hulu, but I wouldn't quote me on that. But I did start going through and watching a couple of at least that a lot of what people rankings and different. I went through Screen Rant. I went through Google. I went through a couple different places just to IMDb, just to try and find some collections of what did everyone else think are the top episodes of Courage the Cowardly Dog. And so I started watching a couple. The one that always stuck out to me, and I think did for most people, because it has a very freaky. So here's the thing. So Courage it's 2D all the time, except every once in a while it would throw in something CG, and CG at the time was still coming into its own. So some things on movies, if they put a lot of money into it, they can make the CG look really good. If they kind of didn't throw a lot of money into it, it could look really bad. I feel like they intentionally pushed it to be creepy in this show, because the first one I'm going to talk about is episode 1, in season 1, episode 5A, King Ramses' Curse. It's honestly, I would just Google King Ramses' Curse, Courage, and you'll see what I mean. He's this guy and a thin man with a bulging head and a green outfit with green streaming maybe what do you call it, mummy wrap, but he's got purple hair, and the whole episode, because he's there's these guys in the beginning who stole a tab or a slab or something, and he's trying to get them to return it or something, but then it causes them to crash. But then it gets to the farmhouse, and Courage, he digs it up, and then the guy appears and he's all, "Return the slab." Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna put in the audio right here.
Return the slab.
What?
Return the slab, or suffer my curse.
What's your offer?
This night you will be visited by 3 plagues, each worse than the last. Return the slab.
Ha! Nice try, Professor.
Yeah, it's pretty creepy. It's like that, and then he does these plagues. Well, the first plague is like it rains in the house. The second plague is like this weird music that plays, which is supposed to be like annoying. It's funny. It's supposed to be annoying, but it's just, I think it's funny, and I'll put it in here.
What's your... Huh?
Make it stop!
And then the last plague is like locusts or something, and then that's it or whatever. But then Eustace wants to try and sell it for money or whatever. It's just this whole thing, and that's kind of the episode. Beyond that, there was The Mask, which is like it's like a 2-parter, but like it. So the way Courage works is like each one episode is 2 15-minute episodes. So The Mask is 1 30-minute episode. And honestly, I think I had forgot about this one until I watched a TikTok about it, and how it was like, oh, they weren't, when you grow up and you learn that they weren't just best friends. So in this, this person in a mask shows up, and they're like wearing a white long flowing gown and a white mask with these like big eyes, and they stay there with them. I don't remember why they stay there at the farm. They like Muriel just invites them there, and they want to I think they want to hurt them or something. Like they want to do something to Muriel and Eustace and Courage. So Courage is trying to figure out what to do, but he sneaks into the masked person's room, and he finds this little toy. It's like a mouse, and on it says to Bunny from Kitty. And so he's trying to figure it out. He goes to his computer, and that's when the computer is like very sarcastic, and it's like, oh, what do you want me to do? Like, it's so funny. Like, I love the computer because it's so ridiculous. So he figures out that the person behind the mask is Kitty, which is a cat, and that they used to be friends with someone named Bunny, who's a bunny, who's been essentially forced into a relationship with this dog who's a leader of a gang, and so Courage has to go find her. He goes to a little diner. He finds someone there. He's like, oh, I know Kitty and Bunny. Like, oh, when you see him, tell him. I think his name's like Charlie. So tell him Charlie says hi or something. I don't know. So then Courage figures out where the gang is. He goes there and sees that essentially she's in like an abusive relationship with this dog. He's like a Doberman Pinscher, and Courage is able to break in and essentially because he doesn't really talk, but he does his little and he shows her the little toy, and she's like, oh my god, Kitty. And he's like that he could get her out of there, and then the dogs start coming, and he's able to fend off at least the two I don't know, I guess you call them grunts or goons that he has, and he gets her out to the window, and that's when what is the name of the dog? I can't remember his name, But he comes in, and Courage is able to get her out of there, down like a fire escape, and then the dog starts chasing after them in a car, and they're getting past a railroad track, and like I think the Courage is able to get the car onto the tracks, and then it gets hit by the train, and we assume the dog guy is like gone, and then on the train is at the caboose is Kitty, who's waiting for Bunny, and Bunny sees her and she chases after her, and she gets on the train with her, and they say that they're finally able to be best friends now, which I think is they're finally able to be together as a couple, more so than best friends. But like this is the late 90s, early 2000s, they can't really say that. But it was a really good episode. I was like, man, this is like kind of sad that like it like literally like this person's been like trying to get this other person because they love them so much. It was really good. It was a really good episode. Oh yeah, another one was Freaky Fred. I think he's most notable too. He's Muriel's nephew. The episode's kind of narrated by him about how he's very naughty, and he's a psychopath. Essentially, he escaped from his. She says that he works in a barber shop, but he does not work in one. He has a little tag on that he return to the insane asylum, and he escaped, and he went and visited them, and all he likes to do is shave people. So he shaves Courage except for his little tail, and then he gets taken away back to the asylum. And it's just like he's just very creepy. He's like a very creepy character. He's always just like very naughty. And then there's another one I think is really sad. It's the Remembrance of Courage. So basically, Courage is kind of just at the house, and Muriel kind of ponders on like, oh, I remember when I first found you, and this and that, and like, oh no, he sees like missing. Oh, I remember what it is. He sees a missing dog on the milk. It's like a bunch of missing dogs on there, and he remembers back to his parents and when he was with a baby, a little puppy, and him interacting with his parents. They're tossing him a ball, and then the ball went to the fence, and he couldn't get it, so he got stuck. And as they're trying to help him, that's when this mad scientist comes out of nowhere who's been experimenting with rockets or something, and decides to blast his parents into space. And then it turns out that same scientist is still around, and he wants to blast Courage and Muriel and Eustace into space. But then he's able to get them out and get him inside and blast him off to space. And so, Courage is just like left to remember when Muriel found him when he was a little puppy in the alleyway. But then it cuts to like the guy he's landed on some planet where he launched all those dogs to, and Courage's parents are there, and they're gonna get their revenge on him, and that's kind of how it ends. And that's the last episode. That's the first part of the last episode. It's kind of sad that that's kind of how Courage ended. I mean, it is a good episode. Like I like that one, but it's just still kind of sad because like poor Courage, he never gets back with his parents. He does find a new family, but like he did a little baby. And then another one we get to see is the demon in the mattress. The mattress that Eustace and Muriel share has been old and run out, and so she tells him, you need to get a new mattress because my back is killing me. So they order a new mattress, but it turns out it's like an evil mattress that's possessed, and it starts possessing Muriel. And so then Courage and Eustace have to find a way to get rid of the curse or whatever, and then Courage looks it up on the computer. Again, that goddamn computer. He's so funny. And then he does figure out a way to get rid of the demon. It's that you have to put on a flowing gown and cap, and you got to recite like a chant or whatever. And Eustace tries to do it, but he fails. Then Courage does it, and as he's doing it, Eustace comes back in like full like pressurized suit like type of get up, and he goes to try and rip the demon away from Muriel, but then the demon does get away from Muriel thanks to Courage. So it goes inside of Eustace. So then they push him on the bed. They roll up the bed. They're like, "We want our money back. Come get it now." They come and get it, and they take it along with Eustace. And the episode just ends with them getting a new couch and Muriel just sleeping there with Courage on top of her. And he's just like, "Oh, this is really comfortable." And it just ends. It's so funny. It's so ridiculous. And that's why I love Courage. It's got like a lot of the humor that I really love. And so those are some of the more notable episodes. I know there's a lot more that a lot of people are probably like, "You missed this one, and you missed that one." I know there's a lot. This is a lot of people remember the show from when they were kids, and a lot of people. I feel like this one was more of like my generation, like the millennials. Like this was kind of like our Scooby-Doo. I mean, we still had Scooby-Doo, but and I'll talk about this more in my final thoughts. But like we remember a lot of this. Like you'll see it a lot on like on TikToks and stuff where they're like, "Man, this was really messed up. I can't believe we watched this as a kid." It's like, yeah, but we watched a lot of stuff as a kid in the 90s. So now let us move on to some trivia about the TV series Courage, the Cowardly Dog, and learn some things about the behind the scenes, the production, and the actors. Courage's dialogue decreased after the first season. This is because the creators at Cartoon Network thought Courage talked too much and wanted his dialogue cut short. And I mean, I didn't think he talked. Like, I watched a couple of the first episodes in the first season and a couple in the last season. He didn't really. I don't think it really changed too much. He didn't really talk a lot. I think maybe he did. There was more episodes I didn't see or anything, but from what I was watching, I don't remember him like talking that much, or even like maybe him saying a couple things here and there. Because I think he says like a couple sentences. Maybe that's what they mean. Like cut it down to like a sentence, or maybe even just a couple words. It's just weird that like. I mean, it's a talking dog, kind of like Scooby. I don't know why you would want to cut his dialogue down short. Although it does make it for funnier when he's like trying to explain what's going on, and he turns into like whatever the monster is. He'll turn into that, or like to explain things, he'll turn into like this lab or whatever, and he'll like point to this or whatever. He'll turn into something. Kind of like when Scooby's like trying to describe something, but like he does it in his own way where he turns into what he's like trying to explain. Like when there's a mummy, he turns into like a mummy. If there's like a monster, and but he doesn't know what the monster is exactly yet. He'll just turn into some generic monster, and like to kind of explain. And they're like, "Get out of here!" Like you stupid dog. It's pretty funny. But yeah, no, I don't. He never really like talks and explains things, so I don't know. So the names Muriel and Eustace are actually taken from the middle names of Chandler Bing and Ross Geller of Friends. And I did not know that. I mean, I watched Friends, and I don't even know if I knew Chandler and Ross's middle names. So then does that mean Muriel is Chandler's, which would make sense? His Chandler Muriel Bing and Ross Eustace Geller. I think that's kind of funny that like when John R. Dilworth was trying to come up with like names for these characters, he's just like, you know what? I like Friends. Like I'm gonna name them Muriel and Eustace after Ross and Chandler from Friends, one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I don't know if that's exactly how he talks, but you know what I mean. Like It's just kind of weird. That's such a random place to get the it would make more sense if it was like a show that maybe when he was younger that he watched. I feel like this was contemporary to him, at least in the beginning, because that came out in '94. It started in '94, and then Courage I think started in '96 or '98. So, well, yeah, I guess it was like 4 years after. So, I don't know. Whatever. Whenever Courage takes action to rescue his owners from peril, a variation of Mission Impossible theme is heard playing. This theme varies with each episode depending on what musical arrangement is being used in that episode. And that's very true. I just love there's times where it's like dun 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 dun. It's like playing, right? And he's trying to do something and he doesn't work. And then he's like, oh. And then he goes dun 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 dun, goes faster, when he's trying to do trying to do it again. It's funny. I honestly I like that they did that they chose to do kind of a variation of Mission Impossible and it's usually in the parts where he has to do something drastic or something over the top. There's one where he has to, it's where Eustace turns into a Bigfoot. Don't even get me started on that one. But he has to break into a bank for it, or him or them or whatever, and it's so funny because he's trying to break in by putting the stethoscope to the thing and turning the thing. That doesn't work. He tries to use a crowbar. That doesn't work. Then he finally puts dynamite on the door and he starts climbing up the rope, and then the door just opens by itself, just swings open, and then the whole thing explodes. And it's funny. The music plays right there, he's trying to, it's something perilous, because when he's getting down, for some reason there's lava, protecting the bank vault that has all the money. So how is the person going to get the money from that works at the bank supposed to get across that? I don't know. So Courage originated as a side character called Hamilton in a grotesquely animated short called Smart Talk with Raisin. The first that first aired as a segment in episode number 3-1. I think that would have been for What a Cartoon back then. The character was then completely reworked and renamed to star in The Chicken from Outer Space, which then aired as Courage the Cowardly Dog, The Chicken from Outer Space, and became the de facto pilot for the series, which was animated and written in the same fashion and tone. The Fog of Courage, which was produced in 2014, was a proposed CGI pilot for the revival of the show, and was designed and written in the same tone as the original show, which is kind of crazy that Courage started off as a completely different character, and then eventually got reworked into what we see. But that kind of happens with a lot of characters that we know of, like Scooby-Doo, right? Originally didn't even have a dog named at all, and then that guy got reworked until finally they're oh, then we get the Scooby-Doo that we see now. And then, honestly, I would have loved for them to have brought Courage back. And even though CG, I think that might have worked, too, for the show. Because, like I said, a lot of the, cutaways to, some of the villains are CG and some other parts are CG. So I think it would have worked, to have that CG. But I bet you, it was probably someone at Cartoon Network that was well, I don't really like Courage the Cowardly Dog, so we're going to pull the plug. Like they always do. And it's very ridiculous, and I wish they would bring him back. But let's just get into the films and other media that Courage has been in. So Courage the Cowardly Dog doesn't officially have its own like spin-off movie or series of movies, but it did get a crossover movie. Straight Out of Nowhere, Scooby-Doo Meets Courage the Cowardly Dog is a 2021 animated comedy film produced by Warner Brothers and is the 36th entry in the direct-to-video series of Scooby-Doo films. Honestly, I didn't know that there was 36 of those. Honestly, there's probably more. I think it's like on its 40th. I think it's almost on like its 50th. The film is a crossover between Scooby-Doo and Courage the Cowardly Dog, obviously, and was released on DVD and digital on September 14th, 2021. So the premise of it is, while unmasking a bank-robbing clown, Scooby-Doo hears a strange noise and it drives him to dance before he runs away. Meanwhile, Courage appears to be having the same problem, though Courage's owners, Muriel and Eustace Bagg, don't seem to notice. The gang rushes after Scooby, only to find that they've ended up in Nowhere, Kansas, where many hostile cicadas are surrounding Courage and Scooby. After they kill the cicadas, Muriel calls them over to the Bagg household, where they properly meet her and Eustace. Both the Scooby Gang and the Bagg family are invited to dinner with the mayor of Nowhere. On the way there, Scooby and Courage are attacked by a giant cicada queen, resulting in the destruction of Eustace's truck. Arriving at the mayor's mansion, they are offered a tour of an ancient museum detailing Nowhere's bizarre history of attracting weirdness to the town. However, Shaggy, Scooby, and Courage look for something to eat, while Eustace heads back to the Bagg residence to rid himself of the nuisance. Shaggy, Scooby, and Courage are attacked by the Cicada Queen, whose brood knocks Fred, Daphne, Velma, and Muriel into a hidden cave. There, they discover a strange machine randomly sending out cell phone calls. Shaggy, Scooby, and Courage destroy it while escaping the Cicada Queen. Attempting to return to the Bagg residence to unravel the mystery, the group is once again attacked by the Cicada Queen, which kidnaps most of them, leaving only Scooby and Courage behind. Plugging Velma's personal tablet into Courage's computer, they discovered that Cicada's unnatural size and every other strange encounter Courage dealt with was the result of a dark matter meteor, the one presumably to have wiped out the dinosaurs, which is buried under the spot where the Bagg house is. Which would explain a lot, right? Courage and Scooby retrieve the meteor and rescue the gang. Their attempt to escape is thwarted by the Cicada Queen, who takes the meteor and holds Muriel hostage, forcing Courage to face his fears and confront it. After a long battle, the Cicada Queen is trapped under scraps from the Bagg windmill. The General and Lieutenant soon arrive to apprehend the Cicada Queen, which is revealed to be a mech piloted by two of Courage's most recurring enemies, the villainous feline mastermind Cats and the French con artist duck Lickwack. After discovering the meteor's existence, they teamed up to take over Nowhere's political facilities and to use the resources to dig up the meteor to hypnotize and rob several well-off locals. Stashing it at the Bagg residence, Eustace discovered this earlier, but wrote it off as a windfall on his end. When they learned that the Scooby Gang was in the area, they used a meteor to brainwash the local cicada population to scare them off in an attempt to up their game. The General attempts to secure the meteor to be used only ostensibly as a weapon, but at Courage's suggestion, it is turned into a disco ball so the group can celebrate. Therefore, Courage closes the movie by saying, "Well, good night, folks. Bye," bidding the audience farewell. And honestly, if you look at it as kind of like a sequel to the series, it kind of does explain some stuff that goes on throughout the series itself. And I love that they bring in, another cartoon show that we talked about on here, Scooby-Doo. And if you want, you can go back and listen to that Horror for Kids episode about Scooby-Doo and the long history of Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo has a long history, and I'd love to get back to it because they're still pumping out Scooby-Doo stuff. Like, they're still making more movies, and I think that Velma show got another season. I don't know why. But let's get back to Courage. Though the series has no official game, although I think somebody was working on a game for it. Characters from Courage the Cowardly Dog appear in the Cartoon Network games Cartoon Network Speedway, Cartoon Network Block Party, Cartoon Network Racing, and Cartoon Network Universe Fusion Fall. And you had seen something on TikTok, a game or something, where you're like Courage and you're going around the house. It turns out there's a couple of fan games. One I think I saw was a demo on Dreams for PS4 and PS5. And that's probably the one I was watching. I was watching a little part of it where you have to kind of like sneak around the house. The lights are all off. You have a flashlight. And the one that I was watching, like you had to avoid this one guy in the bathroom. Like you had to hide in there and wait for him to leave and get like downstairs. Then you could go up to like the computer and access some stuff that you needed to do. And like honestly, like it's kind of like a survival horror. If they did something like that, I think it would work really well for Courage, because Courage the Cowardly Dog works. I think like a lot of horror stuff, like with like Five Nights at Freddy's or Phantasmagoria or something. I forgot what that one's called. But anyways, they're like survival horror type games. I think putting that into place with like Courage and seeing some of the freaky things that come out of that and having some of the quirky villains from there would work pretty well as a game. Like just imagine trying to like, so like you're like trying to get to like the diner, but you got to go through all the way from the farmhouse to there. There's like nothing, so it seems like you're going for like a long time, like nowhere. Or you have like an action where you could try and explain to them where you're like, oh, you turn into this, you turn into that. Or, I don't know, like, I feel like there's a lot of things you could do with Courage as a game. I wish they would maybe try and do that. Especially when they're taking a lot of IPs nowadays. Like Jason, and Friday the 13th, and like, all the stuff that's in Dead by Daylight, or even Killer Clowns. They're taking a lot of those, and they're making them into these games. And, I think it works a lot. And a lot of the millennials like me, Gen Zers who watched it, would love to play a game like that where it's just Courage and you're trying to go around trying to solve the mysteries in nowhere. All right, so now we come to the part of the podcast where we get into my final thoughts on the show. I love Courage the Cowardly Dog. I forgot how much I loved him until I watched like a couple episodes, and I see things on TikTok, and you like, it's just so funny because it's like you forget so much stuff, and then you watch it again, and you're like, man, that brings me back. That makes me remember this, or that makes me remember that, and it's just so crazy. Like I love like all the little things he does, like when he screams, when he's trying to explain things, and when he doesn't, because I love that he doesn't like talk to Muriel and Eustace. He'll say a one-off line like to break the fourth wall, but he won't say anything specifically to them. He'll do that thing where he's all transforms, and he's like pointing and like trying to explain that like the monster's coming, or the monster's on the way, or hey, like watch out for this or watch out for that. And that's what I love about Courage, is like I love that like too, like his dynamic with Muriel. Like Muriel loves him and he loves her, and he's gonna try and protect at least Muriel as much as he can. He's trying to protect all of them, but it's at least Muriel at the most, and then Eustace is just kind of there, and he always gets in the way, and either he like ends up like fumbling his way through into something, or like getting possessed, or getting like taken away with like the slab, with the return the slab, and then he gets taken away, and just things like that where Eustace just gets like his like folly of being so greedy and so selfish, like just gets him like the worst. And and then like Muriel is so nice and kindly, and it's just so funny, like just that they just never pay attention to him too. Like they always get into these situations where something weird is happening, and they just kind of blow it off, and it's like, poor Courage, he just constantly has to like try and tell them like, there's a monster, there's there's an alien, there's a ghost, like you're literally possessed by a demon, things like that. And and even when the bad guy's not even like a bad guy, they're just an antagonist, and they're just trying to like with Kitty and Bunny, they're just trying to find each other again, and Courage just needs to help them get back together. Or like Cats and Lickwack, they just keep coming back to like try and do their evil plans. Or even like the Space Chicken, who comes back later, and and like that too. Like I remember watching that like it wasn't even a pilot, it was just an episode of What a Cartoon, because I remember, oh yeah, the chicken one, because I remember the eggs were like spotted or something, and Muriel was making them, and he was getting so mad because they were eating the eggs or whatever. And then from there, because so that premiered in, I think, 96, I think. So and then like 2 years later was Courage, because like a lot of these, right? It was like I saw them on there, like on What a Cartoon, and then it wasn't for years later or a couple years later that they translated them into their own shows, like Johnny Bravo or Dexter or Powerpuff Girls. Like that's when I remember. Oh yeah, like I remember the shorts on What a Cartoon, and they were completely different from, because obviously they're going to be different. They're like the pilots too, to even just see if the people want them. Because there's one too that I remember, Muriel and the Count. I don't know, something like that. It's basically from Dracula, and so I remember that one like sticking out to me, and I never understood why that never got translated. I think that was the same person who did Powerpuff Girls, and Mina and the Count. That's what it's called, Mina and the Count. And it was like her friend it's like a little girl. She's Mina, and then her friend is Dracula, the Count. Well, the Count, and they're just like friends or something. And he comes over and wants to suck everybody's blood, but then she's like, no, they're my family. And he's like, oh, I guess I won't suck their blood. I always thought it was a cute little cartoon, but like there's ones like that where I never understood like how like these were like done pretty well. Like how did they not translate it to getting its own show, and how come some of these other ones did? But Courage was one of those ones that it stood out. This pink little beagle who's going around like scared and stuff all the time. He's so afraid of everything, but at the same time, he has to step up and save his family because they're so dumb. They're just like, well, Muriel's just like an innocent person. She's such a nice, kind lady, and Eustace just doesn't want to believe any of it. And like he has to take it on himself to like help them. And you know what? Honestly, I think that works as a show. It was only for 4 seasons. Each episode's, like I said, half an hour. It's got 2 minutes, or I think there's 2 that are a half hour. If you have time and you want to watch it again, I say watch it again. Like I said, it brought back a lot of memories, and I remembered like all the episodes. I was like, yeah, you know what, I did remember watching all these. And I think, and if you have kids now too, and you're wanting to show them something to get them into like horror, I honestly think this would be better than like starting them with some like a scary movie that's like I'm trying to think of. I think this works better than like a Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark or something like that. You know what I mean? Like a Nightmare Room, or what's the other one? The Haunting Hour. Because I think this one plays on like, well, it's all cartoon. It's ridiculous. It's over the top. There are some parts that are kind of creepy and scary that are going to probably stick with them, just like they stuck with us, millennials and Gen Zers, that we remember now to this day because they stood out so freaky. But for the most part, I think I feel like Scooby-Doo, like they're really good ways to introduce people or kids to like horror, because like with Scooby-Doo, at the end of the day, it's always a person in a mask, right? So for them, you can always explain, look, see, like maybe if they're afraid of like a clown character or like a ghost character or something, right? You can always explain to them, look, at the end, like, see, it was just a person in the mask. Like, that's like most things in real life. It's like it's not gonna be a real monster. It's just probably something you just don't know. Courage is gonna be a little bit different, where it's like, see, like it's over the top and ridiculous, but like, see, look at that monster. He wasn't really bad. He just wanted to get his stone back, his tablet, and it's just because Eustace was greedy. Like, that's the moral of the story. Don't be greedy. And like, encourage, like, it kind of shows you, like, yeah, maybe you're afraid of these things, but you got to stand up to some things that you make you scared, because you got to help the people that you love, right? And I know it's so much for like a cartoon to examine it like that, but that's, I mean, like I said, I mean, that's why we show horror to kids. That's why I do this series, right? Where I examine like what we as kids consumed, especially during I don't know why during the 90s in particular, that like it was so okay to be like, here's a bunch of horror media. Just watch as much horror media as you want, and you guys won't be afraid no more. I think that's kind of what they were. I don't know what they were thinking of. I think it's also coming off of, you know, where before we didn't have PG-13, we either had PG or we had R. And so in the 80s, a lot of things that were considered, you know, like pushing the boundaries on what is PG were things like Gremlins, things like Indiana Jones. So they were technically PG, and so like any kid could watch it, but like, was it really suitable for them? And so I think in the 90s, it was really this kind of like, well, we have PG-13 now. Here's what's acceptable for kids. Like, we can show them some like stuff that's a little bit scary, but we can also pull back, especially like with Goosebumps. Goosebumps always has like a twist where, oh, it's not always what you think it is. Or like with Courage, it's like same thing. It's not always what you think it is. And I think now I wish there was a little bit more of like that horror for kids, because now it's getting harder and harder to like. So like, I feel like with my nephews, they're either gonna watch something that's really scary and not like it and not get into horror, or you're gonna have to try and like watch it first, and then kind of be like, well, I think they'd like this, but maybe don't show it to them just yet. But I think things like this, like, I wish there was more of this out there for kids nowadays. So maybe there are, and I just don't know. Maybe it's something on YouTube, especially with that whole thing, with the whole thing of YouTube and TikTok and social media now, where it's like maybe they consume it on there, and like they do, like TikTok. I do see a lot of scary TikToks where I'm pretty sure maybe my nephews probably watch that, and it's like maybe they shouldn't be watching the scary TikToks, because those are pretty scary even for me sometimes, especially when you're up at night late and you accidentally scroll into one and you're like, nope. And then YouTube too, like, has its whole host of like, you can find scary stuff on there. But yeah, I mean, like, this is a good way to like be like, here is like a more safer environment to watch and get into horror, where, like I said, like, even with the movie, like the crossover movie with Scooby-Doo, like, the cicadas are only bad because two bad guys are brainwashing them into being bad. So the bugs aren't even really bad. It's just that there's two bad guys who are being really bad. And yeah, and that's kind of where Courage sits. And right now we don't really have anything more for Courage. Honestly, like I said, I wish they would bring it back, or maybe do something with it. I don't know. I know that Thea White died, the voice of Muriel, and the voice of Eustace too is kind of all over the place, so that's kind of sad also. But like, if they brought it back, I would be there 100%. Like, even if you brought it back on like HBO Max or something, or sorry, Max or something, I'd watch it. Maybe a couple episodes. Like, you do like a limited run or something. Maybe Courage finds his parents again. That'd be kind of fun. Or sad. Or I don't know. But did you watch Courage as a kid? Did you ever see the chicken from outer space. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on showing kids Courage the Cowardly Dog? Yes? No? You think it's a little messed up at times? A little too messed up at times? Maybe. We want to thank you all for listening, and if you like what you hear, please subscribe to get every new episode downloaded. Do you have any personal or fictional, paranormal, supernatural, or unexplained stories? We love to read them on the podcast. Please send your stories, recommendations, or anything else to horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to show more support, you can follow our socials on Instagram, Threads, or TikTok at horrorboxpodcast. Also, you can buy me a coffee at coffee.com/horrorboxpodcast. It really helps out. We'll see you next time and hear what comes out from the Horror Box.